The U.S. Department of Energy is cleaning up the Oak Ridge Reservation of residual hazardous and radioactive contamination left over as a result of decades of nuclear energy research. Much of that work has been influenced by the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board, a citizens panel that provides independent advice and recommendations on DOE's cleanup operations. You're welcome to attend the meetings and be part of this important work. For more information, call us or visit our website.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to be back with you again, and as we're starting to return to a more normal meeting schedule. I provided a lot of updates at our last meeting, so this month's list will be a little bit shorter. EM began the transition to the new contract on February 28th. That contract is United Cleanup Oak Ridge. Their acronym is UCOR, and it focuses on cleanup at ORNL and Y12 for the next decade. EM and UCOR hosted an event on February 24th that unveiled the closure plan for the East Tennessee Technology Park. The event included a panel that discussed the progress at the site and details on the path ahead to complete EM's mission there. That 1 hour event was recorded, and Shelley and Sarah will have the link and we'll be able to share that with you. I encourage you to watch it. It's very informative and provides some really encouraging developments happening out there in the community. As our leadership this week has been in Phoenix for the 2022 Waste Management Symposia. Oak Ridge is actually this year's featured site at the national conference. So there's been a whole day of panel discussions on various elements of the local EM program. Some of those elements are working together to clean ORNL and Y12, the future of ETTP, and workforce development. You should be seeing lots of interesting and educational videos and materials coming from that meeting. All those materials will be sent to Shelley and Sarah so that to ensure that you'll have a chance to see those. Thank you again for your attendance tonight, and I look forward for our presentation and hearing from you speak during the meeting. With that, I'll turn it to the next speaker.
EPA, Ms. Foster, you online?
Yes, hi, I'm Samantha Urquhart Foster. I'm taking over as Connie Jones's position, and I became the FFA project manager, transitioned from her to me in December, and we transitioned from her to me in the last meeting. But I'm glad to be here. I've been involved in the Oak Ridge project for multiple years now, mainly working on ETTP projects, and we've had some staff changes recently. Nima has left the agency and got on to other career endeavors, and we've got a couple of new hires that we're putting in. One's got experience working with DOE out of Region 10, as well as when she was a contractor. So we're excited to have her on board because she brings some experience with working with DOE to the group. So anyway, I'm grateful to be here, and that's all I've got for right now.
Good deal. Thank you for attending. Christoph, are you online with us?
He is here. He's just muted. Hang on a second. I'll see if I can message him. Christoph, are you with us?
Hi, Shelley.
Did you have any comments?
Christoph, do you have any comments you want to tell the board? Well, we'll come back to him here in just a little bit if you want to. We'll go ahead and move to agenda item number 3 for the presentation for the 2024 budget. We'll have our vice chair tonight read the bio of Colonel Ddfo.
James Ddfo serves as the acting director of the planning and I can't even do it tonight. Give me a paper. Thank you. Sorry. James Ddfo serves as the acting director of the Planning and Execution Division of the Oak Ridge Office of Environmental Management. He is responsible for overseeing the planning and execution of the cleanup of Oak Ridge's 3 primary sites: the East Tennessee Technical Park, Y-12 National Security Complex, and the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. His oversight also includes strategic planning, budget development, and fund management. Previously, Mr. Ddfo served as acting portfolio federal project director for environmental cleanup and closure activities at ETTP. He is a retired U.S. Army colonel with 30 years of service, providing extensive leadership, engineering, and construction experience. He received a master's degree in environmental engineering from the University of Tennessee and a master's degree in strategic studies from the U.S. Army War College.
Colonel, thank you for joining us. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. As you said in the bio there, I'm acting for Alan Stokes, who is the Planning and Execution Division Director. He's currently acting as the Deputy Manager for Laura Wilkerson. But if you want to go to the next slide. This slide depicts the federal budget process, and the process begins with each department submitting their budget request that reflects their priorities to the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB. OMB then consolidates and analyzes the department budgets and may pass them back for revision. The departments then have the opportunity to appeal and their passback budgets before OMB sends them to the president. And then once the president reviews and approves the budget, he submits it to Congress, where subcommittees in the House and the Senate draft budget bills. The bill is then sent to the Appropriation Committee to resolve differences before going to the final floor vote. Once passed by Congress, the bill goes back to the president to be signed into law. So prior to the first step shown in this process, the Department of Energy requests their programs. In our case, that's the Environmental Management Program. And then the programs request the sites, in our case, Oak Ridge, to provide input based on their specific priorities and plans. And this is a fairly long process, a multiple year process. So currently the FY22 budget has still not been signed. So it's still going through this process. The FY23 budget is in the second step of the process, with OMB consolidating the department budgets. And then the departments are forming their FY24 budget request based on their priorities and plans. So each year, as we're forming our budget request, we like to conduct this briefing to kind of communicate our priorities to the SSAB and to request input. Go to the next slide. So OREM builds our budget based on a life cycle planning that reflects our priorities. Each year we start to develop our budget request. We identify and quantify changes in priorities and differences in scope or levels of effort. We categorize work in 4 areas that are shown here on the slide in priority order. Our top priority is to maintain safe and compliant operations while meeting the regulatory milestones we have established. These priorities are the same as they were last year and have not really significantly changed in the last several years. We sequence our work to align with the funding targets that we receive, and this primarily impacts work categorized as 3 and 4. but could require renegotiation of regulatory milestones in some cases. We identify and report impacts on the planned work based on funding targets when we submit our budgets request. Go to the next slide. Okay, this slide shows some of the appropriation accounts funded with the defense funds. The funding levels are based on the FY21 enacted budget and are shown to give an indication of the size of the accounts. The slide also highlights some of the achieved and planned accomplishments in the various different accounts. So just kind of hitting some of the highlights and going through them fairly quickly. 11D, that covers the uranium-233 disposition at ORNL. And in FY21, uranium oxide canisters were processed at building 2026. And as part of the process, thorium was recovered for medical research and treatment. And this year we plan to start hot cell processing work. In 13B, this account covers the true waste processing and disposal. We made several shipments to the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, or WIP, last year, and we'll continue with shipments this year. We also continue work on the sludge test facility. Under 20, that covers funding for our safeguards and security. That includes our security force as well as cybersecurity and other safeguard and security requirements. The last one shown on this slide is a fairly large account, 41 and 42, and that covers surveillance and maintenance as well as cleanup at Y12 and ORNL. Work in these areas has ramped up as the building demolition work has completed at ETTP, and we're transitioning the highly skilled and cleared workforce to ETTP, or from ETTP to ORNL and Y12, and that should save both time and money when we do the work at those two facilities. And one highlight from FY21 was the completion of the Y12 biology complex demolition. This was an important project because it cleared land that was needed to support the ongoing Y12 mission. Go to the next slide. This shows a continuation of the appropriations accounts. The first four are funded with defense dollars, and the last two are funded with either uranium enrichment D&D funds, which are set aside to be used specifically at sites formerly used to enrich uranium. That's Oak Ridge and Portsmouth and Paducah. So kind of going through a few of the highlights in FY21, we continued the construction of our mercury treatment facility at Y12, and we're continuing that effort this year. The proposed environmental management disposal facility, or EMDF, is critical infrastructure that's required to support planned facility demolition at Y12 and ORNL. We submitted the first draft of the EMDF record of decision in FY21, and we'll issue the final version in FY22. Once the ROD's approved, we plan to begin some early site work while the design is being finalized. We also continue technology development efforts to better understand the impacts of mercury in the environment. That's been an ongoing effort and will continue this year as well. We have an account that supports regulatory support that allows us to provide support to TDEC and the SSAB. And then we continue to use our UED&D funds to complete cleanup work at ETTP and to fund the pension and medical benefits for the former uranium enrichment workers. That's the last two accounts. Go on to the next slide. This slide's taken from the FY22 Congressional budget request, and it shows how DOE's EM program uses its defense dollars. There's a lot of competition for defense dollars within the EM programs across the DOE complex based on the overall Department of Energy priorities. As discussed in the previous slides, we depend on these funds for the cleanup work at ORNL and Y12. We go to the next slide. This slide is also taken from the FY22 Congressional budget request, but it shows actual and estimated allocation of UED&D funds. These are funds set aside specifically to support cleanup activities at the former enrichment facilities. And there are fewer program activities eligible for these funds. So in Oak Ridge, these funds can be used for cleanup at ETTP, but not at ORNL and Y12. The funding levels have dropped as we completed demolition of the buildings at ETTP, and we expect the levels will continue to drop as we complete soil remediation as well. Eventually, we plan to transfer the long-term stewardship requirements of the site at ETTP to DOE's legacy management. We expect that would probably occur in the late 20s to early 2030. The next slide, please. Okay, so these are OREM's priorities, come from our program plan. They form the basis for our recent budget request, and we don't expect changes in the overall priorities in our FY24 budget request. I mentioned before, the ETTP activities can generally be funded with the UED&D funds, but the other priorities are all primarily funded with the defense budget. Next slide. And so we're currently operating under continuing resolution pending the final approval and signed FY22 budget bill. The FY23 budget is currently going through the federal budgeting process, and because of where it is in the process, we're unable to discuss it in detail this time. But this is the opportunity to provide input on the priorities that might influence the FY24 budget formulation. So you know, I think in the past you guys have written a letter, so we would encourage you to communicate any of the thoughts you have on prioritization of work done here in Oak Ridge. You know, we take that input seriously, and it's an important consideration in our planning process for our FY24 budget. That's really all I had to present, but again, I encourage and look forward to your input into our priorities here in Oak Ridge.
Thank you, Colonel. We'll open the floor first for the board members. If anybody has a question for Colonel Daffern, just try to take one at a time. Ms. Shelley, do you have any questions from guests that have raised their hands that you see?
I have no raised hand. Again, if you have a question, at the bottom of your screen, there's the raise hand icon. Okay, we do have one question. Mr. Malone, go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? I had a question on some of that funding you were showing. Is that for that second disposal site? You showed like 120 some million for environmental management disposal facility. Is that second facility that they're preparing? And
Yes, the EMDF.
yeah.
Yes. We have a current operating facility that we also have a line item for construction of a new disposal facility.
Because my understanding, at least according to the 2020 slide deck, that first disposal site should be full by now, right?
There's still some room in that site. It was filling up at a pretty fast rate while we were doing building demolition at ETTP. The workforce now has transitioned to Y12 and ORNL, and they're largely focused now on deactivation of facilities. And so that work generates smaller volumes of waste, and a lot of that waste is shipped off-site. There is still some capacity in the existing landfill, but the new landfill is going to become very important when we start generating large volumes of building debris from those future projects.
So it sounds like you don't really have a concern then that as far as the second site will come online fast enough?
Well, I think there is some concern. The next step is to get the signed record of decision, which would give us the authorization we need to go ahead and construct the facility. At that point, we can do some early site preparation work that'll help, condense the schedule for construction while we finalize the design of the facility. So we're watching the schedule very closely and working hard to try to get the record of decision signed and approved to allow us to move forward with construction.
Okay, and what's your projected timing then to get that second facility online?
I am not sure what the current projection is for that, and don't know if, let me see if, I don't think we've got the PFPD from Y12 on with us this evening. I think a lot of our people are out at the Waste Management Conference and may not have been able to participate. So I can get an anticipated date.
Yeah, no, that's okay. But it's at least a couple of years away, it sounds like.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Harriet.
A question on a different vein. I'm just wondering how difficult it is to produce a budget kind of 2 years in advance or 3 years in advance of its working when you're still trying to accomplish things under the current budget and not knowing what the intermediate budget is going to be. It sounds like it's almost a hot skillet you walk on when you're trying to do budgets. Is it that? Is it as difficult as I think it looks like it is?
Well, it's been difficult for me. This is the first time I've been as involved with the budget formulation in this new role that I have as the acting director for the division. But I don't think it's necessarily uncommon. I mean, we're working under a continuing resolution. I think that's more often the case. It's rare that we have a budget approved before the fiscal year starts. So I think that's not an uncommon occurrence. We do, try to. We have some long-term strategic planning that we do, and it's documented in our program plan that tries to, identify our priorities, and we're looking at different scenarios and what, we might have to adjust based on different budget scenarios. But it's, I guess it could be a little frustrating having that uncertainty, but we've got a lot of people with a lot of experience in forming the budgets and looking at the various scenarios. So we'll be prepared to execute under whatever budget scenario we get approved.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Just please raise your hand. Colonel, again, thank you for your participation and your presentation. We appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
Group will go straight into the public comment period. Ms. Shelley, do we have any public comments?
No public comments were submitted by the deadline, but we will continue to accept public comments through Monday on this meeting.
Okay. Item number 5 on the agenda will be call for additions or a motion to approve the set agenda that we're fixing to fall into. So do we hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Okay.
All those in favor, raise your hand, please. Shelley, let me know when you have a count.
We are good.
So request for new action items is topic A. Topic B is next meeting. We will not have a board meeting in April, but we do encourage everyone to sign on to the EM SSAB chairs meetings. That will be April the 20th and the 21st. The ORSM will return back for the next meeting, May the 11th. The topic will be the waste disposal capacity. And that will be Loman, McCurdy, Perez, Shields, Shoemaker, Swindler, Tapp. If we have additional participants on the board that would like to try to take an active role in any of these issue groups, remember to please reach out to Shelley. Let Shelley place you in those issue groups so that way we can consider you. A lot of times we will transfer emails back and forth asking questions to try to keep the meetings to a brief time, but still accommodate any questions that some of the board members may have or some ideas. Anything else before we start our meeting? Okay, so participants not in the business meeting, feel free to sign off. You don't have to wait in. Thank you for your participation tonight. We'll go straight into the board business. The first topic and vote that we'll need to bring up for a motion is the charge 1 for the chair's recommendation on outreach that all the participants should have received in their email that Ms. Shelley had sent out. Remember, charge 1 and charge 2, this has been a conversation and a topic for some time now. It's just an official vote that we will need to do for DOE and for EM to process through the Oak Ridge Site Specific Advisory Board. It's really not to a point that any changes could be made to it, but we need to still entertain a motion and a second and a vote to approve it. So we'll start that out with do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Okay, looks like we have 9-4.
Any against? Please lower your hand unless you're voting against. Thank you. We'll go to item number B. Vote on the chair's recommendation for the DOE 10-year plan. Again, kind of the same scenario in the summary. All the board members should receive this. This is a document that's been in the works for several months now, for some time. Really can't make a change to it at this point. We just need an official vote. So do we hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion second. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Okay, I see 9 in favor.
Any opposed by like sign, please raise your hand. Thank you for the vote. Item C for a vote will be to approve the February the 9th, 2022 minutes that was sent out electronically to all the board members. We have a motion that we approve those minutes.
Motion.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Okay, I see 9 in favor.
Any opposed by like sign?
See 1 oppose.
Okay. Ms. Melissa, we'll go into you next for your response to the recommendations of the Ddfo report.
Thank you, Leon. We don't have any current open recommendations that DOE needs to respond to. All of those are, have all been responded to in the past. I don't really have anything other than I'd like to mention for our May meeting. Right now, we're still not sure whether it'll be virtual or in person. So hopefully we will know in April that we'll be able to give you a month's notice. But right now, there's still the jury's out on that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee reports for the EM. One thing to keep in mind, we will be having elections coming up on the EM meeting that will be virtual. Make sure if you show an interest for vice chair, please come up and show that interest to Ms. Shelley. I think Bonnie Shoemaker has showed interest for the chair position, but keep in mind you can still, by the bylaws, still nominate from the floor. So we're still looking for an active vice chair or anyone else that would be interested into the chair. But I think Bonnie showed interest for that. So John, you want to give the report on the EM?
That's about all the report I think that we had, just kind of personal testimony there. Even for you that are new on the group, don't be shy about volunteering for specifically for the vice chair position, I did that my very first stewardship committee meeting. And I can pretty well guarantee if you do, you'll learn a lot from it, and it'll get you on a track to help with administration as you learn what happens with the executive committee and maybe develop an interest in the president and vice president and secretary position. Just, I think Shelley has mentioned it before, but all of us except for Amy are in our last term. And so we need to develop some people interested in those leadership positions here pretty quick to have a functioning group. So the vice chair of the EF Stewardship Committee is the perfect place to start. The main duty is just to participate with the meetings when the chair can't be there. So it's a good opportunity to sit and observe and maybe get to chair a meeting or two, but generally it's a learning position. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, John. On the comments for the executive, and I'll kind of pair those with Article 9. There's several topics that we need to, as a board, be very active in trying to find participants to come to the ORSA board for interest. We're always discussing future members that could sit onto the board when we mature off or our tenure is up after 6 years. And I mix this with my closing remarks. Until you actually, I think, travel outside the Oak Ridge area or the reservations, when you're on a national level like Phoenix is this week, you realize that the strides at Oak Ridge Reservation, all the contractors and all the DOE employees through the years have made such an impact in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. All the other national laboratories, whether it's in the country or out of country, individuals are curious about our success stories. So when you have a day yesterday, like they had, that was profiling Oak Ridge, Tennessee and all its success stories across the countries for everybody that's attending here, that's a legacy that Oak Ridge gets to have. And as a member of the ORSA board, that's something that's very important to try to help carry that torch on for the contractors, the DOE employees, and all our support group that helps us. We need to help them try to continue that success. So is there anything else to come before the board before we adjourn tonight? Michelle, you have anything else before we close?
No, sir.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.